Rebel. Reject. Create.
Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are in the world, and welcome back to the Rebel, Reject, Create podcast with me, David Chislett. And in this episode, my guest is Lois Holzman, who is the co-founder and director of the Eastside Institute, an international research and education center for social therapeutics and performance activism. And two approaches to ensemble creativity for self and world transformation. Welcome, Lois. Lovely to have you here and to speak to you.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here.
Right. So the one title description that you've applied to yourself is the Developmentalist. Can you explain to us exactly what that means?
I will tell you what I do and why I do it, and I think that will be responsive to your question.
Okay.
Without ever giving a definition. I don't really like definitions because they box people in. So I was trained as a developmental psychologist, studying, researching, observing people of all ages and what the developmental process is. And I wasn't happy with it because, number one, it said that development was something that happened inside you. Number two, it happened in stages that were kind of regular and perhaps universal, unless something got in the way. And number three, it was in other ways so dualistic. So I started calling myself a developmentalist. I made up the word maybe 15 years ago, and I realized that what I do is not study development, but help people develop. And so it's an activity. I think development is a social, cultural activity of people working together to create our development. I don't think it happens to us. I think we create it.
Wow. Now that's a very powerful perspective, because now you're shifting this whole responsibility, as it were, from outside to inside in terms of who and what you could become. Am I understanding you correctly?
Partly. I think that what it does, and I love your observation, is I think it's more radically getting rid of the inside to outside dichotomy.
Right.
Because it says development is a joint accomplishment. That we can't develop by ourselves, that we are always, for example, involved in either being in an environment of some sort, and I don't just mean physical. Let's say a family is an environment, a school is an environment, etc. And or working to transform that environment, whether or not we are meaning to. So a baby brought home from the hospital or just birthed in a village completely transforms the environment of the family. Completely. Nobody planned. I mean, some people plan it. They buy a crib, they do this, and so on. But you really don't know what it's like. But it does transform that environment. And so the infant and whoever the infant is living with have now the job, if you will, of continuously transforming the environment in such a way that hopefully everybody grows, but in particular that the infant grows up.
Right. Okay, so that means that from your perspective, from this perspective, the environment is a critical factor in what gets created.
Absolutely.
Now, that's not a perspective that many people hold. So what led you to this? And can you give any sort of concrete examples of how it works?
Sure. Good question. Well, I think my own history is the first thing that led me to it, in that I don't know how it came to me, but every time I was in a different kind of environment, my own home that had no books, no college, nobody went to college, no music, no nothing, no culture, friends who had all that stuff, I was a different person. I I was, like smart in high school, and then everybody was smart in college. So what am I going to do? How am I could see that the environment and me were never ever separate. No one is ever without an environment.
Mhm.
And so the impact the environment has and your ability to both transform yourself and transform it at the same time is something that I lived. It was a lived experience without any words attached to it, like fancy stuff I'm saying right now. And then doing child development research and sitting on the floor for a year and a half with different 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, and playing with them and seeing the kind of environment you could create together and the relationship that that environment produced.
Right,
Those
right.
are just two things right away.
Okay, awesome. Because I mean, when we had our initial discussion, I mean, I immediately, because I happen to be in the middle of it, thought of Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi's book on creativity, where he actually says, well, of course, environment's hugely important and massively underestimated, I think, because he says, well, why do you think art movements were centered in particular locations?
Mm-hmm.
Because they had the cafes, they had the bohemian lifestyle, they had other artists were pouring in. So that environment became conducive to art in a particular way. And the same is true of massive scientific breakthroughs. You have these hubs where things are happening. And I also read a book by David Byrne from the Talking Heads talking about
Mm-hmm.
music and
Mm-hmm.
literally saying certain styles of music emerged because new environment, like concert halls, were physically possible and were being built. Are you kind of connecting to those dots as well?
I am connecting to them, and I want to add, and I don't want us to ever forget that human beings created those environments.
Right.
It's not just like, oh, now we have concert halls. No.
Right. Fully formed. Woo.
Think of the creativity and the ensemble building that went into building the concert hall.
Right.
And so for me, that kind of creativity and the specification of environments that are conducive to certain kinds of creative activity has everything to do with our ability to have our experiences and imaginations play with each other.
Mhm.
Infants, babies, very young children do that all the time. They go to the zoo and they when they come home from the zoo, their stuffed animals are now zoo animals. They just
Right.
make them up. They keep changing things, creating new experiences for themselves, which then their imagination can play with. And one of the crises of creativity that I see as people become adults and get adapted to the society is that their imagination and experience don't play very well together anymore. And so we have to reinitiate that. And I think the kinds of environments you're talking about that David Byrne and Flo and this one and that one talked about for architecture, for everything, for science, is an
Yes.
instantiation of that experience and imagination playing with each other once again.
Like a loop that just goes round. It goes
Yeah,
round.
yeah.
All right. So I'm hearing a very positive message in this,
Mhm.
maybe because I just want to. But I mean, does this mean that for an individual, if one is feeling unfulfilled or frustrated, that one of the critical steps you could take is not improving yourself, but improving your environment or choosing a different one?
Absolutely. And preferably doing that with others and or thinking of the environment as a human environment. Think of the humans in it. So I do in my role as developmentalist, I have a column.
Mhm.
It's kind of every 3 weeks, every 4 weeks. I write a column. People write me letters, dear developmentalist. And one of the most recent ones was there's some about workplace. And so the question is, how do you get out of? I usually think that the person's problem has to do with them having a developmental dilemma, meaning
Mhm.
they're looking at the solution to their problem in a way that is according to what is the way things are.
Right.
You know, do I tell this person how I really think, or do I not? Or, you know, do I leave my job or do I stay there and suffer?
Right.
But and so it's an issue, it's a developmental dilemma because they're not looking at it from the perspective of how can we transform this? How can I do something here where all of us, where my team will grow? Not how can I get this team member to listen to me, but how can I do something? Can we do something where the team will grow?
Okay. Right. And develop. Gotcha. Wow. Okay, that's interesting because I was giving a workshop on presenting today, and somebody was talking about the goal of their presentation, as if the management who were dealing with a certain category of staff issues literally couldn't do anything about it if it had nothing to do with them. And instinctively, I thought, well, that's not a very helpful response. But so what you're saying is to make something of that is to say, okay, how can we get everyone in this situation to grow?
Yeah.
Hmm.
And or, you know, people will look at you like you're crazy, perhaps, but it's a starting point, or it's some kind of switch in the conversation so you can get it off the good guys and the bad guys.
Right. Because I mean, you mentioned binaries before. I mean, that's polarization. It's an unhelpful dichotomy. As soon as you get to polarization, you eliminate the middle ground, and then there's nothing to negotiate about.
Exactly. And so how do you create environments where people can see and do something slightly different, even if it's for 2 lines of a dialogue, you know, they're having
Right.
this, but oh my God, we just talked and we didn't do that. That means it's possible.
Right. Right. Excellent.
Possibility is really important.
Okay. Hey, if you're watching or listening to this, it's Lois Holzman talking to me about her role as a developmentalist and the role of the environment and creativity. Please hit the like button, the follow, the subscribe. There's plenty more episodes like this that are already live and plenty more to come after this. So if you're enjoying the conversation, please do sign up and subscribe. So, Lois, I always ask my guests, if you were only allowed to tell somebody one thing from everything that you know that could help them develop, improve their life, what would you say?
One thing, not one word, right?
No, not one word.
Okay, that would be impossible, but
Filter,
learn
filter.
how put yourself in situations where you can take the way things are glasses off.
Wow. Put yourself in situations where you can take the way things are glasses off. In other words, you need to be where it's kind of obvious to you that the way things are is just a perspective, it's just one point of view, or I mean, this is interesting.
No, you don't even have to. You don't even
Right?
have to believe that. You could believe that the way things are the way things are.
Uh-huh.
Right? You don't even have to. But if you put yourself in situations where, for whatever reason, you lose your glasses,
Okay.
you will see something new.
Right. Aha.
So it's not a mind, it's not the mindset, oh, there are other perspectives, let me take these glasses off. It's more, I gotta take my glasses broke. Oh my God, I see things. Oh,
Right.
there are other perspectives. It's
Right. Okay. Gotcha.
yeah.
Wow. Okay. I mean, that sounds, I mean, that's what happens when you step outside your comfort zones, isn't it? When you go and experience things that you're uncomfortable with, that you don't know, inevitably you're going to see something that you just can't easily file.
Right. That's a very growthful experience. It can be very scary. But if you're doing it with other people, if you're doing it together, if you're doing it in a way where people have your back, it's glorious.
Nice, nice. So obviously, when we're talking about environments, as you've already said, we're talking about human environments. There is no human without an environment. Are people aware enough of their role in any environment, do you think? And is there something to be done in that area?
That's such a good question. I don't think people are aware enough of their role. I think people often, and for some people almost all the time, aren't even aware that they have an impact on anyone. It's they're in their head so much. I mean, I think good group therapy, the kind we practice, but many other people, group therapy, if it doesn't do anything else, it is a reminder that other people are in the world. You know what I mean? It's like so many people aren't aware that they are creating it. So we used to do these workshops at our institute, called what was it called? Rewrite Your Family Play or something like that. I don't know, for families. And this family is fighting and all the bad things that go on in family. Well, excuse me, but who created it? You all created this family. So it's not so much merely a taking responsibility for having created it, but if that's what you created and you don't like it, you have the power to recreate it into a way that's more to your liking.
Clearly, if you could do it once, you must be able to do it again.
Exactly. So that's I think one way that people don't have not enough practice seeing their role in creating situations, environments, etc.
Well, I would I'm going to sound like a conspiracy theorist here, but I would hazard a guess to say that, societally, that's not a concept that is encouraged. That might give everybody a little bit too much free will and too much agency over actually what does happen in their lives.
Exactly. And that's why it's so needed, because people feel so powerless and beholden to the powers that be that say who we are and what we should do and how we should live, and they'll take care of everything else. Don't worry about it.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah.
Lois, it's been fantastic speaking to you. I can't believe our time is already almost up. I know, just like that. So, parting thought from you. What like particular message do you want to give to my audience? Bearing in mind this podcast is very focused on creativity, how it works, how it can be used to change yourselves and the world for the better. What is your parting message?
Keep creating environments where you and all your people and maybe everybody in the world can be creative. Keep creating creative environments.
Excellent. I like that very much. Lois, thank you so much for being my guest
today. Thank you, David. Wonderful talking to you.
Awesome. And for you listening and watching, thank you so much for your time and your attention. Don't forget, if you've enjoyed hearing Lois's perspective, you're probably going to enjoy my other guests. So please follow, sign up. What's the other one? Subscribe, like, and make sure that you don't miss a single episode after this. So remember, keep on rebelling against the status quo, rejecting your own assumptions and preconceptions so that you can create into the space that will emerge. Until next time.